All right, let's get started here. First off, thank you all so very much for being here today. We want to first and foremost express appreciation for you taking a few moments out of your day. We all know it's a difficult time for so many as we deal with this ongoing pandemic, and we're all adjusting to the new normal, and many of us are working from home or virtual environments. So thanks for taking a few minutes. We're extremely excited to partner with Procure America to present an update on the recent decision that was made by Pacific Gas and Electric to delay their new time of use rate structure until March of 2021. And we'll be discussing a lot about the potential impact this could have on California agencies. Our discussion today will last roughly 25-30 minutes. We'll have a short question and answer period, which will be about 5 to 10 minutes directly preceding or directly following the presentation. You can submit those questions through the chat feature here in WebEx. Any questions, comments, feedback of any such, you can send those directly to us, and we'll be sure to address those or follow up with you directly once the presentation is over today. So with that, I'd like to introduce myself and the guest speakers today. First, my name is Brennan Middleton. I'm a part of the marketing team here at Avenu. I will be your host and moderator. I'll also be facilitating many of those questions or comments that you have. So thanks for doing that. Next, CEO and President of Procure America, Fred Armendariz. Fred's bringing with him more than 20 years of experience in both public and private sector. He currently leads all day-to-day operations, including strategic planning and client support services for Procure America. Prior to Procure America, Fred held senior executive position in both President Bush's administration and for 2 California governors. So Fred, thanks for being here today. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, Brennan, and thank you to Avenu.
Next, Division Administrator of Utilities for Procure America, Michael Kikorian. For more than 30 years, Michael has worked with public sector organizations across California, helping them manage and optimize utility rates and tax structures associated with utility expenses. Michael has been, quote unquote, the go-to authority in this space for many decades and is here today, thankfully here today, to assist all of us in navigating the new PG&E rate structures being introduced. So Michael, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brennan.
So first, let's quickly run through our agenda. First, we'll give a little bit of a background on Procure America and discuss their unique situation as it pertains to this delay by PG&E. Next, we'll walk through an overview of time of use rates, that of which will include historical rate structures, the new structure, and what is changing. We'll go over the different portions of what is changing. And lastly, how this delay by PG&E to update to the new structure does present an incredible opportunity to California agencies. Lastly, we'll discuss specific action steps that are available and how you can leverage this short-term opportunity to see significant savings in electricity cost. Lastly, again, we'll have that question and answer period. You can submit those through the chat, which I see many of you are already utilizing. Thank you for doing that. And we'll address those questions or comments towards the end. So with that, let's get started. Procure America is presenting today as Avenu's exclusive business intelligence solution provider to government agencies nationwide. They are the nation's leader in this category and currently hold over $2 billion of client expenses under management. We're extremely excited to partner with them today. And with that, I will turn it over to Fred.
Well, good morning, all. And it's a little surreal, as you noted, Brennan, to be talking about utility rates during these uncertain times. But with budget season coming, every dollar is going to count, and duty calls. Also, this issue that we're going to discuss is time sensitive on several fronts, meaning that there's going to be a short-term opportunity that exists that's unprecedented. But before we start, I wanted to thank a couple jurisdictions that helped us with the modeling component. One of them is Contra Costa County, Santa Cruz County, the city of Dublin, the city of Hayward, Davis Unified School District, and San Francisco State University. They all participated in the modeling component of this project and were very helpful. To get into the nitty-gritty, it's a little dry information, a little wonky, but I'll try to do my best to keep it light. First of all, in the 70s, the PUC introduced what we now call time of use rates, and they haven't changed since. So it's been over 40 years since we've had these particular rate structures in place. As you'll see, there's 3 criteria in which time of use structures come into play with each meter: the time of day you use power, the time of week, and the time of year. We call that the old structure for discussion purposes, but they actually are the current TOU rates that are in place today. They're a complicated system, but as consumers have had 40 years to navigate through these structures, they've learned to master them. And most agencies, most organizations have done a really good job in maximizing the opportunities and minimizing the pitfalls. In terms of the new time of use, next slide if you don't mind. In terms of the new time of use structures, as you know, they were set to be introduced in November of 2020 mandatorily, meaning that all agencies, all consumers would migrate to these particular structures in just, 6 months from now. Last month, PG&E had requested a delay to March of 2021. If you look at the structures to the right on the screen, they are much more complicated than the historical rate structures that we've had. And they now have 3 seasons and 4 daily time increments. But back to the delay to March of 2021, the delay on its surface didn't pose to have any economic or operational discomfort to consumers. But Michael and his team quickly identified that there was going to be a challenge in terms of some organizations that had already done made operational changes, investments in technology or behavioral modifications in order to curtail the impact associated with these new rate structures. As most of you know, for the vast majority of clients, costs will go up. And as such, large consumers like cities, counties, organizations we support like Kaiser Healthcare and so on and so forth, we're deeply concerned as to what these ramifications would do to their budgets. So we started modeling these rate structures well over a year ago, and have been able to help our clients in terms of minimizing or mitigating the net effect associated to the higher pricing or the different types of use and the more complex structures that are being introduced. To do these models takes a significant amount of analysis and capability to properly identify the economic effect. But as noted, we've had some really great public sector and private sector partners to help us, and we were able to draw out the conclusions that were needed. As a result of the request by PG&E to delay the deployment of the rate structures till March of next year, Michael and his team objected to that, that if you call it changing the goalposts in the middle of the game scenario, and as such have been able to negotiate a settlement with PG&E that will I think not only allow agencies to minimize the increases, but actually save money over the next 6 to 9 months. With that said, I'd like to turn this over to Michael because he really is the authority here, and he's the one that negotiated directly with PG&E in terms of the accommodation that we're going to discuss.
Thank you, Fred. As Fred mentioned, originally the mandatory date when all accounts will transition to the new time of use rate structure. Originally, that was November of 2020. Last month, PG&E proposed changing that to March of 2021. And when they did that, we notified them that we would have a problem with that change because it was changing the rules of the game and in the middle of the game. And so through a series of calls with senior folks in their tariff and regulatory departments, we were able to come to an accommodation. And what that was, the result of that was this advice letter, it's called, that was filed with the PUC on March the 20th and took effect 30 days after that, which was just this past Sunday, April 19th. So as of 4 days ago, the result is that now the accommodation is that customers have the option not only to opt into the new time of use rate structure between now and next March, but they also have a one-time opportunity to opt out of those new TOU rates between now and March. And that's a really, really important accommodation, and I'll explain why in a moment. But the result is that our modeling shows that significant savings are now available for customers. You know, and I should mention that I've been working, as Brennan mentioned, with California's major utilities on rate and regulatory issues for the past 30 years, and this is the first time we've had a situation like this where customers can elect to be served under two different rate structures. So it's a really great opportunity. Yes, it's only for the next 10 months, but in the savings on individual accounts will not be dramatic, but when you apply it to dozens or hundreds or even thousands of accounts, in some cases, the savings really start to add up, and they definitely are significant. So let me explain a little more how we use this opportunity to reduce clients' utility costs. And this is getting a little more into the weeds of the specifics of this opportunity, but I think it's important to help you understand how we're doing this. So we developed what's called a time of use optimization strategy. Now, what do we mean by that? If you look at the bar graph on the right of this slide, this is an actual client account. And I can tell you that for this particular account, this is a specific meter. Again, this is a meter by meter analysis that we do. For this specific meter, if you add it up, this is over the course of a year, if you added up the total PG&E charges under the new rate structure and compared it to the old rate structure, what you'd find is that the new rate structure is slightly more. And as Fred mentioned, that's what we're finding in the vast majority of accounts. So if you were doing an analysis for this account and you looked at it on an annual basis, which is the way PG&E does it through their rate analysis tool, you'd conclude, let's just leave that account alone because there's no benefit. Rates are going to be slightly higher under the new rates. Let's leave it alone. However, because we have this opportunity to opt in and opt out, we can take advantage of those periods when the new rates are lower. So if you look at this bar graph, overall the new rates are higher, but there are specific periods where they're lower. So over the coming 10 months, if we can find 1 month or 3 months or 6 months out of those 10 months that the new rates are lower, it's well worth it to opt in to the new rates during that period and then opt out when they're no longer beneficial. And we're calling that our rate and date program. And we manage that entire process. Not only do we do the analysis, but for every single meter, and as I said, there could be hundreds, we make sure that the change to the new rates takes effect on the optimal date, and then our clients get out of those new rates also at the best time in order to minimize PG&E cost. So again, this is not something that, you know, we have several large clients who have looked at this in the past with PG&E, and they weren't able to do this, again, because PG&E is looking at the opportunity on an annual basis, whereas we're going at a much more granular level to look at the specific periods and when the new rates will result in benefits. So with that, I'll hand it back to Fred to describe kind of the next steps in this process.
Well, and also to recap, this development really just went into effect, the new rule, on Sunday. So we've had to, in real time over the past 30 days, not only take the systems that we developed for the previous environment, the previous rule, where you could opt in or opt out one time. Now that you have the ability to straddle two rate structures at the same time on a meter-by-meter basis, we've had to, and that's why I wanted to thank those agencies, in real time develop a protocol so we could take advantage of this unique situation that's really unprecedented in a lot of respects. In terms of the action steps, they're very simple. One of the things that we hear from agencies and in the private sector as well is that staff time is very limited. We just don't have a lot of hands on deck right now. There's a lot of stress on our systems, and you know, this is a great project, but gosh, Fred, we just don't have the resources or the manpower or the people power, excuse me, to pursue it. So this system that Michael's developed with his team is fully automated. So we retrieve all of the data from PG&E electronically, the interval data, in order to run the analysis. We then go meter by meter, as Michael noted, modeling both rate structures, the different times of the week, times of the day, all the different components that would influence the pricing platforms. And then we bring a report back to the client with a detailed strategy on how to leverage these two pricing structures simultaneously on an opt-in, opt-out basis. Some people even call it cherry picking, which is usually not a positive word, but in this case, it's exactly what we need to do in order to identify the most appropriate and favorable rate in real time. As Michael noted, after the strategy is approved by the client, we would then deploy that strategy in real time, managing the schedule for application for the rate convergence and the calendar associated with that. And then I think one of the things that we maybe didn't outline as well as we should have, but it still goes back into the time concern, and that is that our utility team not only does the analysis, but again manages the complete project from cradle to grave. And there is a grave on this, and that is March of 2021. At the end, in step 3, after March of 2021 comes and goes, we do a reconciliation of the entire year for the client to show them exactly what they saved in terms of cost due to the deployment of the strategy. In terms of the program highlights on the next slide, a couple things. One, we designed a program with the California State Association of Counties, CPUC, to do this particular project on a zero-cost solution, or what is called a shared-in savings plan, where we share 50-50 in terms of the actual net benefit delivered. So we'll do all the work, deploy the strategy, and then next, probably May, we will do a reconciliation. So the agency would get the benefit of these lower-cost platforms for the better part of almost a year. Again, I noted, and I'll note it again, staff time is something that we will not deplete. This is a very self-contained modeling system. There are no operational changes, no investments in technology, no behavioral modifications that are required in order to take advantage of the lower rate structures. The timetable to develop a time of use report is about 3 to 4 weeks, depending on a couple of factors. You know, size of agency always obviously comes into play, but most of our systems are pretty automated, so we can hold pretty true to that 3 to 4 week time frame. In terms of your expected cost reduction, it's running about 5 to 10%. Some are slightly higher, some are slightly lower, but 5 to 10% is holding pretty strong with the reviews we've been doing. In terms of what that equates to, obviously every agency is going to have a different level of expense, but in some cases it's 1, 2, 3, 4 FTEs over the course of the next year. And with the environment that we're all facing from a budget perspective, every dollar is going to count. So with that said, I'd really like to answer some questions, Brennan, and kind of let the folks put forward any thoughts or concerns they have, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Excellent. Thanks, Fred. Thanks, Michael. Great overview, great presentation. Thanks for setting the stage and then talking through next steps. So as we mentioned early on, we'd love to dedicate some time to answer questions you may have. Again, administratively, that we have the chat feature here on WebEx. You can submit those, as I see many are coming in early on and as we speak right now. So let's just dive right in. Mike, it looks like the first one is sort of pointed more towards you in terms of your portion of the presentation, but the question submitted was, my city already participates in a community choice aggregation / direct access program. How does this TOU optimization program affect us?
Yeah, thanks, Brennan. That's a great question because throughout Northern California and PG&E service territory, we see a lot of CCAs, which again stands for Community Choice Aggregation, as well as other direct access customers. And what that means, those are simply customers that continue to be served by PG&E for transmission and distribution service, but they are purchasing the electricity, the commodity, from a third party. The CCAs are usually joint powers authority that are purchasing the electricity on behalf of various customers. So we see that a lot. And fortunately, this opportunity is available to those customers equally to customers that are not participating in CCAs. And the reason is that regardless of where customers are purchasing the electric commodity, they're going to continue to have these rate structures that are based on the old time of use periods and the new time of use periods, and they're going to continue to be paying the transmission and distribution costs to PG&E regardless. So the program works equally well in either scenario.
Excellent. Okay. So that question was from a city perspective. This next one is from a county. It says, our county has already consulted with PG&E some months ago. We actually put in place a program to address the new time of use rates, and we are actually seeing savings. How does this new rule affect or enhance the previous study that we already completed?
Well, there's a couple things there. As I mentioned, invariably what we've seen with customers who have worked with PG&E, and many have, especially the larger entities, but what we see from those is that a very small percentage of their accounts have been converted. And again, that goes back to the reason I explained in that slide with the bar graph, is if you look at the new rates versus the old rates on an annual basis, which is what PG&E has done and has the capability to do, only a very small percentage of your accounts will benefit. But the second part of this is that the new accommodation that I talked about, which again just took effect 4 days ago, that requires a brand new analysis because, again, what that allows you to do is really optimize the opportunity by getting out of the new rates during the period when they are not beneficial. So even for those accounts that have already been changed, there are further savings available now that the rules have changed.
And just to tag on to that, what we've found in the analysis we've done for now countless jurisdictions in Northern California is that you might find that the rate structures, the new ones, are good for, say, 3 months, but not good for 9. So when you did the analysis over the course of the year, the 9 drained out the savings you would have found in the 3 months. So now that you can opt in and opt out, you can get the best of both worlds, straddling both rate structures simultaneously.
Excellent. Okay, so for the next one that come in, I think it's more specific and sensitive to the COVID-19 pandemic we're going through, but it says, as a result of the COVID-19 virus emergency, we are short-staffed. What is needed to have a study done?
Again, I mentioned it earlier, but it really is a sensitive issue because, again, we don't have government right now is focused on a much greater issue and much more urgent. This particular study doesn't require any personnel. We don't ever have to even step on premise. It's all done electronically with the vast 99.9% of the information coming from PG&E. The only thing we request from the agency is one invoice per meter so that we can, verify the account numbers and the address and all the rest of it. And again, this is a meter by meter analysis. It's not a complete sweep of the jurisdiction to one rate structure versus the other. It's a customized, again, unit by unit review.
Excellent. Okay. Moving on. This one looks to be a two-part question. Fred and Mike, it says, having a study performed sounds like a quote-unquote no-brainer, it says, but this TOU opportunity expires in March of 2021. Two parts here. How long does it take to conduct the review, meaning how much time do I have? So I guess that's one question. How long does it take to conduct a review? How much time do I have? And then how do I contract for a TOU study?
Two things. One, the time is of the essence. There is some urgency in this because every day that goes by is a little bit of daylight lost. So we are working furiously 7 days a week doing these analysis. It takes, again, about 3 to 4 weeks to conduct a study. We've ramped up for this particular issue. In terms of contracting, there's Government Code 53606, which a lot of you are going to be familiar with. It was almost like it was written for this exact purpose, to bring in specialized fiscal services to support government with projects like this. And every city attorney and county council has looked at this and approved this particular procurement vehicle for this type of review.
Excellent. Okay. Well, it looks like we're coming right up on the 35-minute mark here. If there are further questions after we wrap up here in just a moment, please continue to send those along. We'd be happy to follow up with you on specific questions that deal with your jurisdiction or agency. But with that, I just want to say thanks once again for joining us for the short presentation. Thanks for taking the time out of your day today. We wish all of you the best health through this time. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us directly, and we'd be happy to facilitate those. But thank you all for joining us. Fred, Michael, thanks for presenting today. We appreciate it, and we look forward to speaking with you all again soon.
Thanks, Brennan, and thank you, Avenu, for hosting this forum today.
Great. Thank you.
Excellent.